if the police walked through NYU dorms and they stopped and frisked those young people, most of them white, they'd find more drugs in those young people than they would in Marcy Housing Project.
My name is Jemaray Pyatt with the Game Changers Project. In New York, possession of less than 25 grams of marijuana is now just a civil infraction, resulting in just a fine. But displaying or using marijuana in public is a misdemeanor, a criminal offense which can result in arrest and jail time. The question of where cops are looking for people in possession of or using marijuana is very intriguing. I've decided to do some investigating.
Overall usage, probably percentagely, it might be higher in a project depending on how many people live there, but the number of people could be close, because in a large university it could be, you know, thousands of kids.
I think it's more drugs in housing than in universities itself.
I would say, based on my experience, that there is more drugs happening with young people on college campuses than there are in the projects. I say that both as somebody who used to be an educator and speaking very frankly with my students and knowing that the majority of them did not use drugs, and that was a high school in the Bronx where a lot of them actually lived in the projects, and as somebody who's gone through her undergraduate degree on a private school campus where most of the people there used drugs regularly.
Government data shows that young white men smoke and possess marijuana at higher rates than young Black and Latino men. But in New York City, 85% of the marijuana arrests are young Black and Latino men, and 70% of them are between the ages of 16 and 30. 52% are between the ages of 16 and 22. Young Black and Latino men are disproportionately being arrested for marijuana, and it's wrong.
So in 1977, the state of New York, the legislature passed the Marijuana Reform Act. This established that low-level possession of marijuana was a ticketable offense, a violation. The only way it became a misdemeanor is if the marijuana was in public sight, either being smoked or the idea being it's in your hand on the way to being sold. This is how the law was written. It's how it was enforced for about the next 20 years. What then happened was, over the last 15 years, the police have now started utilizing the law in a way that's unconstitutional. They're actually violating the law. They're walking up on suspects and saying, if you have marijuana on you, you should take it out of your pocket now, be better off if you do that. Or they're rifling through their pockets, finding the marijuana and claiming it was in plain sight. They've now moved the possession of a low-level amount of marijuana, 1 joint or 2 joints worth, from a violation, a ticketable offense, to a misdemeanor. And now they've made it a criminal act that will follow somebody for the rest of their life. These are very, very serious issues. Number one, it's an issue because the actual law is being violated by the NYPD. Number two, because you see over a 15-year period, less than 40,000 people being stopped and arrested for marijuana usage, and now you see 50,000 every single year.
What does 50,000 people look like? The seating capacity in Yankee Stadium is 50,287 people.
87% of whom are Black and brown men. And they're being criminalized for doing something that under the state penal code is not even a crime.
The statistics and data that the police use and that the district attorney's office more importantly use in terms of who they can lock up. They know that if you fight the case, if you get a real attorney who you're paying a lot of money to, who's fighting the case tooth and nail, it costs the city a lot of money and it costs the county a lot of money. If you are of lower income and you have to get a public defender, most public defenders, unfortunately, who are good people, but they're taking plea bargains because they can't afford to take on so many cases and fight every single case. They're taking plea bargains, and the best way to lock up a big percentage of the population is to take a lot of plea bargains.
The stop and frisk policy in New York City is problematic for at least 2 major reasons. One is that for all of the stopping, and that is in 2011, nearly 700,000 recorded stops took place, and only about 6% of those stops ended up in an arrest, and another 6% ended up in a summons being issued, which means that the policy is about an 88% failure in terms of detecting criminality among people who are stopped. There are generations of young people growing up believing that they are not free to walk the streets without having their liberty interfered with by the police. And that is a very tragic thing, particularly for folks of African ancestry who have always had the experience of being controlled by the government. There's a way in which some young people in high crime communities have come to believe that it is routine and okay for the police to ask them to stand against a wall, to put their hands up, and let them pat them down. Very often, the police find nothing, and they get in their car and they drive off. That is raising a generation of young black, mostly men, who don't have the freedom that everyone else in America has. And I think that's absolutely detrimental, and it's a very, very unfortunate state of affairs in a place like New York City that prides itself on its diversity, but doesn't treat all of its populations the same. And for that reason, organizations like Communities United for Police Reform have published a pamphlet like this one that says Know Your Rights, help end discriminatory, abusive, and illegal policing, so that people can understand that even if they're poor, even if they live in a high crime neighborhood, even if they don't have the best of everything and they hear gunshots in their community, the people who are not doing the shooting, the people who are not involved in the violent crime, do still have a right themselves to be left alone.
For the Game Changers Project Fair Policing Campaign, my name is Jemaray Pyatt.